I want to move into specifics with the diet, and I think a good entry point is talking about your diet. Can you give a typical day what that looks like?
Sure. I mean, and it's changed so much since, writing the book. Well, I guess I can give you, when I first started, I was very low carb. Like, I want to say, it was very boring, in the counseling and stuff I've done. People are like, oh, you should write recipes. I'm like, beef, beef and beef. Like, it's so boring. If I was single, it would be, yeah. I mean, I won't waste time on that. But, I definitely prioritize ruminant animals. I don't think I will ever change that. And I'm also, through all the research that I've done, I've become a fan of like the nose to tail. Like I posted on my Instagram recently. I got a heart, like a big deep heart, 3-pound beef heart and ground it up. I don't love like some of the other like liver and kidney, but I also value that. There's nutrition in that. So, we've been told not to eat ruminant animals. Most people associate that with beef, but that can also be lamb or venison or whatever. So I would say I was gonna say at least one meal. Most of the time, 2 meals a day has beef. Like I had beef this morning. Um, and then, the other protein. So, I normally eat 3 times a day, sometimes four with running. And it'll be some type of protein. After running, we make long fermented sourdough. I'll do some sourdough, butter. I do coffee. I've started drinking something called Unamate, which we can talk about. Um, I live in the Pacific Northwest, so, outside of Portland, Oregon. So I do incorporate some salmon. Um, yeah, it's like I said, it's pretty boring. The starches that I would do would either be the long fermented sourdough. Sometimes I'll do some white rice or a sweet potato. A little bit of seasonal fruit, but pretty heavy still in the butter, the olive oil. When my training increases, carbohydrates increase. It's nothing too exciting or magical. But I found for myself and for my mental health, I've experimented going back, like, oh, would I benefit from doing more carbs? And I really don't, at least at this point. So it's not like 50 grams anymore, but usually anywhere between probably 100 and 150 grams of carbohydrates a day. Um, and I'm open, I'm always like, I never want to be dogmatic because that's how I feel like I was for a while when I was just following the standard guidelines. I think if you're metabolically healthy, doing a lot of distance running, or you're very active, you can probably tolerate more carbohydrates. But for me, 3 times a day, it's at least, 4 to 6 ounces of protein. In the evening, it's usually more. It's usually like 8 to 10. It's pretty heavy in the evening. Lots of butter, olive oil. Like I said, sourdough and some rice. It's so boring when I say it out loud.
Just so we're not throwing people off because you are such a distance runner,
Yeah.
how different would the carb intake be if you weren't? For that average person out there who's metabolically unhealthy, maybe they're
Oh,
going
yeah.
out for a short walk. I want to make sure we clarify that carbohydrates are different in your case.
Yeah. If you're somebody who's like, once again, let's say you're trying to lose some weight, A1C is high, your belly fat, all these different things, I would keep carbohydrates, like my wife is a metabolically healthy person, but she keeps them about 50 grams a day. So that means that, if you're having some vegetables, like her day would probably look something like I'm having some eggs or some sausage in the morning, then I'm having, a chicken salad with some nuts and some olive oil, and then the evening some beef and maybe like a small piece of sourdough, maybe the one carbohydrate serving a day versus the 11 that the former food pyramid had. So most of the nutrition, if you really are certainly trying to be ketosis, you're going to be really focusing on higher fat things, beef, butters, olive oils, avocados, and you're keeping carbohydrates almost non-existent. You might have a single piece of fruit, a single slice of sourdough, a single something, but most of your nutrition is coming from a fat and then protein.
Are you a fan of fasting, either intermittently or a longer fast?
I am for metabolic health. There's people out there too that say that like, oh, that's super stressful on the body. Um, I have struggled getting enough calories personally when I do that. But once again, like I'm coming from I rarely run less than 10 miles a day. So, but for somebody who's like, hey, I'm metabolically unhealthy, I think fasting, and especially intermittent fasting, because that's another thing humans do. You eat all the effing time. Like even when I was a kid, I think, remember your parent was like, you can't have a snack. You don't spoil it. You're going to spoil your dinner. Now it's like, Kids have like they're snacking all day. They've got chips and cookies and frappuccinos and all this stuff. So giving your body a break is a really good thing. Your pancreas was not meant to be secreting insulin all day long. Poor thing gets exhausted. Imagine you have to work all day long. So, for a lot of people, won't even eat their first meal till later in the day. And then they'll eat, like lunch and dinner. I know some people who benefit from doing the reverse state early in the day. Maybe they have their last meal kind of early at like 3 or even 4. There's different ways to do that. But yeah, I definitely think that can be a really positive thing, especially for people with metabolic illness.
Conventional dietetics, are they still being trained to tell people to snack throughout the day?
Yeah, especially type 2 diabetics. Is that wild? Yeah, when I was going through dietetic school, it was eating more will rev up your metabolism, which is interesting because every time you eat, unless you're eating pure fat, which, maybe if you're in the carnivore keto space, you might have a little bit of butter or coconut oil. But if you're having some protein or some carbohydrates, you're going to get an insulin response. And insulin, as we talked about earlier, it suppresses fatty acid oxidation. That it very quickly stops the body from burning fat. It says, oh, cool, we got all the sugar. Don't burn fat, burn sugar. So if you're trying to burn fat, if you're trying to lose weight, wouldn't it make more sense to not eat as often, not be having that happen as often? That's kind of what I always tell people, the paradox of the fat marathoner. You go to a marathon, and if you watch just like a full marathon, a lot of people who run are overweight. And that like blows your mind. Like you're running 40, 50 miles a week. How are you overweight? But think about it. You have carbs before, so you suppress fatty acid oxidation. You're eating tons of carbs during. As soon as you're done, you're eating carbs. You're eating carbs all throughout the day. You're never giving your body a chance to break down or even teach your body how to use your own body fat for fuel. You know? And I'm not saying as an athlete, you shouldn't have carbs or you shouldn't eat some carbs, but the traditional way of doing, exponential amounts of carbs, especially when you have excess body fat, not ideal.
When we were talking earlier about transitioning to lower carb, you mentioned bone broth and electrolytes. What supplements do you recommend for people on that end of the continuum, low carb, keto, carnivore, if any, long term?
First of all, I want to say, like, when it comes to supplements in general, I am like super skeptical. Like, I hate. There was one time in my life when I went to like a functional medicine doctor and they listed like, okay, you need to take all these supplements. And I mean, I was 25 and it was like 8 different things. And I'm like, oh, and they were expensive. And so I was like, oh, I don't know if I need this. But there are a few supplements that I take every day that I think are really important. Um, if you're someone who like eats nose to tail, I mean, it's just pretty rare, that we in all of our food is, obviously sterile. So I'll tell you, like, especially like, let's say you're listening to this and you're like, all right, I'm going to start doing low carbohydrates. But I want this transition to be as easy as possible. I want to make sure I'm covering all my bases. Um, I would start immediately drinking Unimate. Like, when I heard about this initially from a dietitian, and then I was so skeptical. It's a yerba mate concentrate, put in water, you drink it, it's a tea. And I was like, you got to be kidding me, a tea. This woman was telling me it increases fat oxidation, it increases your body's own endogenous GLP-1, it increases the liver's production of glutathione, so it makes you less inflamed. And, I was like, yeah, I'm not interested. And she was like, okay, well, Dr. Ben Bickman is on the science board. And I was like, oh, I'll call Ben. Like, so, call Ben. I'm like, I should call him Dr. Bickman. I called Dr. Bickman and I'm like, do you believe in this stuff? Does this work? And so he sent me all these published studies. His lab did a study on yerba mate. And obviously, it's very popular in South America and Argentina. And I was kind of blown away because I'm a big coffee fan. I love my coffee. But yeah, so Unimate, once again, yerba mate concentrate, very high in chlorogenic acid, actually increases ketones. In a fasted state, increases fat oxidation on a cellular level. And I'm not trying to lose weight, but for me, I use it because one, very steady energy, also has theobromine, so you don't kind of get the like, ooh, ooh of coffee. But the anti-inflammatory effects, like who do you know in your life that doesn't want to have sugar cravings, doesn't want to be achy, and potentially needs to lose some fat. So love that stuff. Drink that every day. And then electrolytes, like just getting that, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. There's so many different brands now, LMNT, and that doesn't necessarily have calcium with it, but, gosh, I'm blinking on. There's a bunch. Make sure you're getting some type of electrolyte supplement. And I take a separate calcium magnesium in the evening. I drink something called Cadence electrolytes. I don't have any affiliation with them. I just like it. And like those are the big ones, you know. And collagen is another thing that I'm becoming more of a fan of. Collagen and glycine. I mean, collagen is very dense in glycine, and of course, it has other amino acids. You know, just because we don't eat the like tendons and things around meat most of the time, but I take collagen and then I take glycine at night.
Since you made it to the end of this clip, I know you're going to love the full episode. Click here to watch. I'll see you over there.
We are not going to medicate or moderate out of this. We have great data, tons of clinical published trials on people reversing type 2 diabetes with lower carbohydrate diets. But if you're very sick, you need to be focusing on what your body